Visa. You cannot. It's a Good Friday, and I'm delighted, bittersweet, all of the things. Um, my guest today is, y'all know Daniel. He's the outgoing executive director of the Arts Council, my good friend and confidant. And I'm happy and excited for him. I am. I really am. But the grace in all this is that he's going to go work for the Americans for the Arts. And it's a nonprofit organization that advances the arts and arts education advocacy in America. So it's like the mothership to the arts councils across the country. I think that's how I like to put that. And so his new boss is Nolen, president and CEO of Americans for the Arts. He's a former U.S. Army general. I got to understand and know how a general can head up a national-wide arts organization, because I don't see military and arts going hand in hand. So he's going to talk about that. He went to school you went to South Carolina State? Is that where you went?
Yeah, that's the old Bulldogs.
Yes. South Carolina
Marching
State.
101. I'll keep going if you want me to.
Oh, Lord. Do you play instrument?
No, but I definitely watched the band. So
all right. So you got a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from South Carolina State University, a Master's of Science in Management from the Naval Postgraduate School, and a Master of Science in National Security and Strategic Studies from the National Defense University. None of this says arts. Or maybe it does if I read between the lines. Welcome to the show this morning. How you doing?
I'm doing just great. And I think the answer is in between the lines. So look forward to getting into that and sharing something with your listeners. So it's great to be with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's great to have you. And it's, it's a rare opportunity that we get to sort of have this kind of transition, right? To see Daniel go someplace where we can get to talk to the person who stole him from us. That's all right. I will contain myself. No, I won't be that petty this morning. I might. So no, you're getting a great addition to your team. So,
without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt.
And I want you to talk a little bit about what you're trying to do at the Americans for Arts, because there's some rebuilding going on over there. And Daniel's going to play a good role in what that looks like in your vision moving forward.
Yeah, he's a vital part to that. And I think to kind of step into this, the big start is that what it's going to allow us to do is continue to show the value of the arts at the community level. And I think, COVID has showed us so much that we can go to from the impacts and conditions that happens at the community level. And we're seeing how the arts are playing a vital role there. And certainly as a national service organization, we got to stay connected with that root. And if we don't, then obviously we won't learn the lessons of this most recent events. But I think in general, the history has shown us that as well. I think it's so exciting because of that mutual benefit that both gets. We have to, I think national level organizations have to kind of maintain a connective with the environment. They have to be sensing what's going on. And they need individuals with, certainly Daniel's background that can be that voice and make sure we're always speaking to that and developing strategy and ideas of how to address that. So it's very vital at this moment in time. And this moment in time is good for both organizations because, Daniel's done some great things there. And I think that opportunity for him to move and help us now is also going to have that payback, as Mom used to say, give back, don't forget where you came from. And I think that's going to allow him to show that value as well, because that's the ear that I need. And that's the kind of guidance we need at this time that we're going through as well.
So Daniel, in your 5 years that you've been here, you've taken an arts council that really the majority of the people didn't have any real faith in, right? Like it was just like a figure kind of thing. Like, yeah, the arts council, whatever, they don't do anything. They're not really helpful to us, but they stand, and we up until the years that Bitsy, during the years that Bitsy Bitsy Clark ran the arts council, it was viable and it was in the community. And then when she sort of stepped down, it started to sort of lose some of its shine, some of its cachet, some of its connection. And then here you come, just like opening the drapes and throwing open the doors and saying, woo, that's a fresh air in. So what have you learned in these 5 years? What when you first stepped into the door, what were you struck by?
Oh, abs.
Okay, we got 45 minutes.
I was struck. Well, there was enormous opportunity, right? There was enormous opportunity, and someone many jobs ago, Babz. I'm trying to think this morning about things that neither you or Nolen know about me yet. Many jobs ago, somebody told me that I had a strong left brain and a right brain, and that's so true at the Arts Council. There were some things financially that were pretty possible to navigate. So we very quickly were able to recapitalize, and we made membership free at the same time, to really expand the connection we have to people and artists and arts workers in the region. And at the same time, there was all these creative opportunities, right? Like we had these amazing assets already, like the arts paper, like the desire, at least from our members, to do political organizing with them and for them. So, really just jumping on those opportunities, in the first couple of years benefited us greatly, because when the pandemic struck, we actually were able to jump deeper into what we wanted to do. Like an early story you might not know, Babz, is that, the board, when I arrived, really wanted to do grant making. First day, like, let's start giving out grants. And I was like, I think that there's other resources we could provide before we start showering money in the community. We have to build trust. We have to have relationships. We have to have some awareness about what the needs are before we assume what those needs are. And of course, over the pandemic, that's drastically shifted. So yeah, I mean, that's been the vibe, listening and evolving every step of the way.
Wow. So in these 5 years that you've been here, what are you taking with you over to the new gig?
Well, I mean, Nolen said it. Like, I know how this work at the Arts Council could have been easier if we had a national thought leader, a national a mothership, if you will, as you said, Babz. If we had a mothership to point to say, look, they're doing this work. They're opening this conversation about whatever the topic is, whether it's cultural equity or emergency preparedness or paying fair wages, whatever the conversation is, they're opening up the conversation. So we should have that conversation. And so I just think that awareness about the importance of that presence and that dialogue between the national, state, and local, and just keep pushing that closer and closer together, that's going to drive our sector, and it's going to drive our communities forward.
So Nolen, you're new to your role. Like, this is new. How long have you been sitting in this big chair?
Yeah, it's I've been in the chair since June officially, and so it is certainly a great opportunity for me. I just have to give a shout out to what I've learned in terms of the organization itself, and since I've been there, great people that's doing hard work every day for the better of the arts and the arts cultural sector of the country. And I think to maybe tie to what Daniel said there, he used a word called trust. And I just like to kind of pull that out for a moment, because even though I just started in the chair in June, I have kind of been around the arts for over a decade plus before that. I kind of cut my teeth. You asked the elephant in the room question up front. What is the general doing in the arts? So let me just get that out of the way for your listeners, and kind of so we can get to the other aspect of it. Actually, I always have loved art, but in terms of formally coming into it, professionally, I would say I came about it in search of an answer to a problem. And I was the deputy commanding general at Fort Hood, Texas, and I had come back from Iraq, and I was also preparing and training individuals to go back. And I happened to go to a hearing test as a part of my annual physical process case in the military. And at the end of the hearing test, the young technician asked me if she could ask me a question, and I said, sure. And she said, sir, a lot of times when I'm doing this hearing test here, I'll start it with the service members, and about halfway through, I stopped getting responses from the sound booth. And she said, I go in there and I think it's a technical problem, but what I really find is a young man or woman sitting in the sound booth weeping and crying. Well, it got my attention, obviously. And I said, she said, but my question is, what do I tell them? Many of them do not want to go to the great medical care that we have here, the physicians. And they're just not encouraged to do that because it's seen as a weakness. They don't want to be perceived as a weak leader. They don't want the culture to think they can't hang in there. And she said, I'm not sure what to tell them. Well, I assured her to make sure she encouraged them to get the medical care. The military has great medical, psychological care, but a lot of the culture doesn't want to be seen as going to see the psychologist, so to speak, viewed as a sense of weakness. So with that problem, I left that hearing test that day transformed. And I said, here I am looking at formations, healthy looking young Americans, great Americans, and yet many of them are going to be going back into combat with trauma. So how do I help them deal with that when I know they're dealing in a culture where they don't want to be perceived as weak? And I ended up on the doorsteps of the arts. And I found that the arts provided an opportunity for them to self-select into remedies and solutions of therapy that they didn't have to disclose. If they wanted to learn how to play the guitar, they wanted to learn how to do writing. And it was not just the service members, it was family members as well. Being able to use time in a very creative way while all the tension was around them. And so I started there actually looking for that solution. I ended on the doorsteps of the arts. Americans for the Arts was one. NEA was another one that engaged me into a process where I think we have about 13 or so connections between military installations and local community creative art therapy treatment. And certainly Walter Reed has that piece as well. And so I spent over a decade. I started testifying before Congress about the value of the arts in our diplomatic world. I grew up on that being in the military. A lot of times when we do military to military relationship building, it's around some art venue. So it's just a part of what we do. Maybe you know this, George Washington commissioned the Cato at Valley Forge for the troops. And, art's been around the military for quite some time. I think in World War II, I know the story of how the arts was connected to this ghost regiment where they actually created false units on the battlefield to deceive individuals. And so it's just been a connection there. It's not explicit. If you visit the Pentagon and walk down the hallway, you'll just see art all over the place because it's historically something that we use. So there is a connection. And so it was kind of natural as I kind of organically explained it to you. That's how I ended up here. And so I really feel a strong closeness to the value of the arts at this point in time. And there's two things I say right now, is that the arts, in my mind, the real value shows up at the community level, because as I was searching for this solution, I realized, and I came across a writing of an individual, and he pointed out that healing happens in the community. And when he said that, it's like, whoa, that's the value of the arts. It's all at the community level. And because if you think of it in COVID now, what does that mean? We've coming out of COVID and, there's loneliness all over the place and people need solutions. The shortage professional during the whole crisis was a psychologist. It was just not enough of them to go around. And so how does a community find remedy in its local environment so that kids can heal, the workers can heal? And art is certainly an outlet for that. And I'm excited about that as we look forward, which kind of goes back to Daniel's point. That tie to the national level now is vital because of the moment in time that we're in. And so I'm looking and reaching out to get those, connections so that I can maintain and move us forward in that direction. So that gets the elephant out of the room. I may have forgotten the other question that you asked, but I hope that wasn't too long-winded.
No, that was, you know what? You got me thinking about military and arts in a way that I hadn't before. And I have members who served in who did military service who have passed away. One in Vietnam and one a few years ago who was a military nurse. So I have military in my family, but I've never thought about the marriage of military and arts. That's a wonderful, wonderful story. I think the pandemic has taught us that arts is necessary. I mean, before, as a consumer of arts, it just made us feel good. We knew it made us feel good. We knew it was something that we could do to sort of enrich our lives, but we did not know until the pandemic how necessary and vital that the arts were to our everyday practical lives. And if it wasn't for artists sort of putting up their work in virtual spaces, that I don't know where we would be, because they really saved us on a lot of levels. I mean, from Yo-Yo Ma playing, every day at lunchtime, to folks serenading the frontline workers in the streets, to choirs trying to join together online and bring music to us. So does that color does this pandemic experience color how you move forward in thinking about arts at the local community, and how the mothership can be of support to the local community? And I want you both to sort of weigh in on that.
Yes.
I like to tip it off, and I'm going to tip the ball over to Daniel real quick. I think, to answer your question, for me at the national level, and I can come back and elaborate. For me, the most poignant point is made is that the arts are a national asset. And I say that because when we think of something being a national asset, it means it has value to the country in a time of crisis. The military is a good example of that. Homeland security is another example of that. But to your point, Babz, the COVID revealed the underpinning of how vital arts as a creativity and a life-sustaining aspect of our community is so vital. And that, to me, must be brought into the community as well. So I think I'll come back to this idea of arts being a national asset, but it's at the community level. So I won't steal Dan's thunder there.
No. Well, because I'm thinking of what you also said before, Babz, about just, and we down here, right, we always talk about how everyone's an artist or everyone is creative, right? There's no one is absent a creative element in their life. And it's really just teasing that out, right? Getting access to that. And so many people access that over the pandemic in new ways, artists and non-artists alike, right? So I think moving forward, like when I think, and Nolen and I have talked about this at length, the distance between leadership and service, right? There's an element of this work which is asking the country and the field, like, what do you need? What would be helpful? What can we do to serve you? But I think you're asking a question, Babz, about leadership, right? So I'm thinking about like the nature of work beyond the pandemic, the disproportionate impact on wealth creation, especially among communities of color, the disproportionate impact on young people from this pandemic over the years. So how does access to a creative expression or a creative career or pathways to those opportunities, how can we set that up for the next decade ahead? And again, at a national level, hold that conversation so that at a state and a local level, folks can join us and lock arms in that conversation and put that work into action through, internships or grant programs or even just types of research that needs to be done about this, so that we prepare artists and arts workers for the future that's really rapidly approaching. I mean, the pandemic, I think, sped up time in some ways. So many artists are independently employed, are independently working. So what do they need to continue doing that work? What is the advantage of childcare or healthcare or even just basic protections as a freelancer that need to be understood? Or so many arts organizations are unionizing these days, right? So what is going on in the next 5-10 years that we could start to craft to ensure that those things are actually going to pull through and happen? Some of these things have been talked about, Babz, for years and years and years, and it's really come to the pandemic where that hit, and it's time.
Yeah, and one of the things that we do, one of the clear core mission areas of the organization is that of advocacy, but also the legislative work that we do at the federal level. And there's a couple of successes in this process. So COVID has shown both the underbelly, but also the possibility and the potential, and that's what I'm really excited about. At Americans for the Arts, we're really now getting to this whole practice of using appreciative inquiry as the way that we want to move forward in interacting with the field, our partners. And appreciative inquiry, as kind of starts from this idea of what's going well. Let's find the good stuff that's happening, and then imagine the idea of what can we next move to. And in terms of the COVID, and you said earlier in your opening remarks about there's rebuilding happening, and I think the rebuilding starts with trust. Daniel talked about his encounter and engagement with that as he came into his job initially, so he's going to bring that forward. But it's also about building what I call a trifecta of trust. We're as the arts and culture sector now, I think we really need to embrace the internal trust building that's needed, but after specific place, trust building between the staff and its board, but also that relationship between the board and the staff and the field writ large. Trust has to be reestablished in many ways. Just the condition of COVID has made us question a lot of things, certainly in the area of diversity, equity, inclusion. We saw those disparities, and we're going to get about and are already about making that improvement. And for us, particularly in the community level, not so much what we say at the national level, is how do we implement and cause that practice to occur at the local level, as well as exemplifying it in our own little space of work that we do. That's very, very important, I think, if we make this overall connection to that. The other idea that we're kind of embarking on more precisely is to this notion of how the arts are a national asset. You know, in 2007, 2008, we probably got good shock waves of indication to that when the economic thing went down and all that impact that happened. You know, but then now the COVID tell us was that we found really 2/3 of the sector unemployed. Well, to me, if you got a sector of our economy that's that much unemployed, that's too big to fail, right? Just like the big other aspects of what the economy can't fail. So we see that the value of the arts is not just about, you know, what we get from them and how we consume them, but what they bring into the community as well. And that's the idea is too big. We see truly the impact in terms of health, right? The value of the arts, as you said, to those frontline workers. I mean, in many cases, that was sort of like combat conditions, to be very frank with you. And seeing what they had to go through and understanding now trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter where you experience it. I cut my teeth trying to get that value to the military component. And also now I think it expands to the Department of Homeland Security. It could go to a lot of other agencies, but there's a lot of spaces that can be benefiting from that as well. Loneliness is probably going to be the next epidemic that we see in the country, not only because of the senior level, but in millennial level. What happened to them in this COVID? Separation, loneliness, being apart. All those factors is a part of the real quality and culture living that we have. And the arts are right at the intersection of that. And I know there's leaders that often talk about the intersectionality of the arts now so we can get that full value from it. So we're looking at those kind of opportunities as well in moving forward. And I'll just stop there because
Babz,
Mom always told me to never miss a chance to be quiet. So.
Oh, well, you're bringing up an Arts Council anecdote, and I don't know if this is one you know, Babz, or not, but I have this in my folder all the time. This is like a clip from like a late 60s pamphlet for the Arts Council. And this is your predecessor by many decades, Babz, Liza Robertson, who was our president of the board at the time, who said the present challenge, but to Nolen's point, the current challenge as well, can be expressed by suggesting that culture be offered as a service rather than a privilege. So like put that culture to service in our communities, not just something that the elite or certain types of people can do or can access or can benefit from, but that we all can benefit from. And yeah, I mean, that's just so resonant to me. That's why I always keep it with me, because it's been in the DNA here and in the waters here in Greater New Haven since then.
I love it.
Yeah.
So we saw another interesting thing that came out of the pandemic that I think was already on its way to the stage. And that is the arena of Black and Brown and other affinity folks being shut out of historical artistic expression. Theater so Broadway so white, Oscars so white, all these places where Black and Brown folks and other folks have not been welcomed, centered, entertained. How do you plan to speak to that? I mean, you're a Black man leading a national arts organization. What does this mean to you personally, and what will it mean to you in leadership as you move forward with this new vision or extended vision or whatever the vision might be?
Yeah, I'll be a little vulnerable and just kind of go to the baseline so you'll know where I'm coming from. There's a quote. I'm not sure who the author is, so I'll make it the anonymous one. But I live by this notion that if service is beneath me, then leadership is beyond me. So if if I come at this from a very service perspective, and I'm glad Daniel said what he just said about the sector. We must see ourselves in service to those that are in the sector. And that's the basis from which we get our leadership. Leadership is earned. You know, I lived in a profession where you earn it every day, as the old commercial used to say. And you earn it by showing that you're first a servant to those in the needs of that particular area you're working in. So I come at it from that perspective. So you're exactly right. But I also come with a background of what is I call the hope of this nation, and the idea that, you know, I was just a country boy at 8 years old. If you'd have wrote the script for my life at that point in time, I probably would have not certainly have been here. And so, but my country represents hope. And I think that as I came into the organization, one of the thoughts I shared with the organization, knowing that we were going to go through a rebuilding, it's a quote from Amanda Gorman's poetry at the inauguration. I said to them, and I'm kind of paraphrasing the quote, "We are not broken, we're just unfinished." And I think that's the road we're on. We have to actualize the potential of what this moment gives us. And it has to be getting to a little meaty on the bone, as they say. We have to get it down to the practice and policy level. And that will take time, but it's a commitment we have to make now and move in that direction. The profession I came in was not removed from this practice years and years ago, but it understood that if we're going to have generals, you have to first have lieutenants and you have to have captains in those critical jobs that can serve at the upper level. And so with that philosophy, I can now look across the arts and culture and say, where's our professional development coming from? How am I partnering with other networks out there to make sure we get that position? Because if we're not getting them in at the gate, you can't get them at the top. And you want to make sure that process of being developed is there for everybody with equal opportunity. That's just one specific example. I could be here for another half hour talking about the rest of them. But that's a notion that I think we have to embrace as a sector. And I'm excited about engaging with other leaders to that end, because I hear that left and right of me as well. You know, we get out of this problem by collectively recognizing we have to build and start at the college level. You know, I came from a historical Black college, as you said. So in my mind, I start thinking about, well, how many partners do I have in that sphere? Because those art managers of the future are coming out of those programs, right? So we have to start linking at, well, again, I use kindergarten as a metaphor here. Those folks coming out there have to be grabbed and culturally brought through and professionally brought through in terms of arts management. Then over time, you'll kind of see that. But if we don't make that commitment institutionally, and as a national service organization, certainly at the national level, we have a part to play in that. I'm excited to do what I can in that area as well.
Mm. Daniel, you want to speak to what we've done?
Well, I'll say two things, because one is also, it's like, depends on how you define the sector or how you define the industry. And I do that. I talk about this a lot down here, right? You know, yes, we might want to talk about theater and you know, we see white American theater, but how different is theater than film? And look at the film industry and the film's embrace of Blackness and excellence, and also even, you know, Asian films. And there's a variety of diverse voices and perspectives in film or on my streaming networks, right? So, you know, it depends on where you draw the line in many ways. And I love drawing the line broader to see inspiration about how many new and emerging and diverse voices have been centered in new ways. But yeah, Babz, this is a perfect example, right? Where, you know, when I got to the Arts Council, we identified that, you know, creativity is a fundamental human right, which sprung lots of conversations about access and equity and anti-racism, and really led to the creation, oh, there goes my light, of the Cultural Equity Plan. And the Cultural Equity Plan is, you know, it's not the only cultural equity plan in the country, but it's one of a few. It's one of the few. And I actually cited Americans for the Arts a lot, Nolen, in the journey there, because there was a study that they did in 2017 that found in the local planning landscape for arts and culture, very, very few of them were centering cultural equity. There's a little dash in the report, and it said, and that's quite a surprise given that it's 2017. And, you know, lo and behold, how history repeats itself. And I think that's a good example of where we did utilize some national resource to bring down to the local level. We took that report to funders down here to say, look, this is why we want to do a planning process that looks like this, that centers artists, that centers artists of color, that centers community. That was the primary goal. Now, the benefit is that is getting spread around the country as well, right? Folks are sharing that report. It's getting passed along. I read also, Babz, just because you mentioned the awards and the issues with these national awards, right? It's a great example of service and leadership. But I was just reading last night an article based in Georgia. It's a high school version of like the Oscars, if you will, for theater. And they have just eliminated gender for their awards. And I don't think I read it on Americans for the Arts website, but the point was, like, look at us, like, we are going to try to do this thing where we don't have best actor or best actress, we have best performance, and lean into the identities of these high school students and what they need, and how at the local level that should influence what's going on in the national conversation as well. And I believe it will. I truly believe it will. But that spectrum and that sort of arc of progress, right? That arc of justice, I think is really evident when you see that all connected, and you feel that connection between the local and perhaps these national televised types of events.
Hmm. Hmm. So as we wrap up this conversation, I always like to ask people, what are they most hopeful about moving forward? Like, what is the biggest dream for the organization? What is the biggest dream for the arts community? What is the biggest dream for yourselves?
Well, I think you want to go first, Daniel? I mean,
No, you want to go first, Nolen.
Well, we all are trying to figure out if we're going to jump on this grenade, is the way we used to say it. So, so at any rate, I think I'm most hopeful. I'll still look from Angelo. I think that he talks about this idea, creativity is something that you can never use up, and the more you use it, the more you get. I think that I'm most hopeful that we will continue that journey of how the arts has really caused so many areas of our country to be great and will continue to be great. And it may sound too broad and too amorphous, but you did ask the world about hope. And hope to me is what ensues from the endeavors that we do today. If we're endeavoring to give that equity and inclusiveness and diversity to our work, it will ensue in the future. Maybe not immediately for us, but the generation beyond us will have something to continue to build upon. So I'm excited about that idea of creativity, which is one of those broader outputs of the art. And I think we need to embrace that collectiveness in it, because it's an area where all sectors benefit from: business, economy, health. The more creative we are, the more we're going to see those solutions that include everybody. The more we're going to be able to put in place practices and policies that will get us there, and then hold ourselves accountable to that. I'm big in the accountability arena. That's the only way you kind of build trust. So that's the way I would sum it up in terms of your question about hope.
Hmm. All right, I have one, and it's related to a story you don't know either. So when I moved back in 2013 to this home area where I'm from and will always be home, I had a fancy job offer that had like benefits and all of the good salary, full time, all that stuff at a community foundation. And then I had this job offer to work as an arts administrator that was way less than full time with no benefits. I had an 18-month-old, and I took the leap to go where my heart was in this arts work. And that put our kid on the state. We were all on the state health insurance, right? Like we had to make some choices at that time that were really hard. And I'm not suggesting that I also contain many privileges and many. But I just hope that it's not so hard, because I'm so grateful and feel so lucky to have been cultivated in this community, and like to be considered a leader in this community. And that's because people have opened doors, and also because I've just kept going when people shut doors on me. So I just hope anything that we can do here and at a different level just makes it easier for people to commit to the creative pathways they want in their lives. There's so many people down here that I know, love, and trust. I couldn't even name them, for whom I hope that they just soar and thrive in whatever their creative practices or creative work wants to be. And there's so many barriers and so many ways that we might work on that together. So that's my hope, just to keep that going and get people where they want to be in their creative lives.
I so thank you both for the conversation this morning. Nolen Babz, it was lovely to meet you. And I, as the chair of the Arts Council, I can release Daniel with all good intentions.
This was the release ceremony, wasn't it, Babz?
Yes, I think it was. And Daniel, I feel like you're going to a place where you're going to be challenged and respected and cared for and listened to and just given opportunity to just shine and help grow this organization and this vision. So thank you both for joining me this morning. I truly appreciate the conversation.
I can't wait to be one of those New Haveners that is now a devoted follower on WNHH and commenter and all of those things. You do such a great job providing that connection back to home for so many people. So I'll be here. I'll be here.
Thank you also, Babz. I think WNHH for that opportunity, and I think what you're doing is so vital at that community level again. And so honored and look forward to a continuous and vibrant conversation with you. Thank you so very much.
Listen, I'm gonna come visit y'all. I'm gonna come see whatever y'all do down there.
Wait, we should plug the Avello flight. Let's plug the Avello flight. Folks.
Yes, I'll hop on a
Avello,
plane.
give Babz a few flights down to DC and maybe some other amazing people so they can come visit me.
That's right.
This is now sponsored by Avello.
Y'all enjoy your weekend. I will I guess, Daniel, I might see you at the Dorothy Awards. I don't know if the weather holds right.
No, I'm not going, but you have fun. You have fun.
I think I'll have fun.
I'll see you on Sunday.
Mr. Babz, good luck and God bless. And I hope I see you soon. Again.
Yeah, same to you. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.
All right,
Bye.
Harry. Play us out on this fine Friday. All right, y'all be safe out there this weekend. We'll be back on Monday. I got guests. You'll see on Monday.